Governor Andrew Cuomo was flying high during the pandemic, loved and praised for his incredible leadership. Then the nursing home scandal hit. Then charges that he bullies and threatens people hit. And now a sex scandal, a harassment scandal hits. Is it time's up for the Lov Gov? It's Rob Nelson Live. Welcome to the Friday night show. Thanks for being here. I'm streaming from Orlando this time, and I got my dark background behind me and streaming out to you guys on all social platforms. Looking forward to your interaction on Facebook, YouTube, Reddit, Instagram, wherever you're coming from. Keeping it interactive and real. It's all about the conversation. And for me, it's not about the left, right, or the center. It's just about finding some kind of a common ground. So, Governor Cuomo. I've talked about Governor Cuomo a number of times in the last couple of weeks because he justifiably got, hello, Elizabeth Lake. He justifiably got a lot of praise, a lot of acknowledgement during the pandemic for how he handled it. And I want to just start out by saying he deserved the credit. It was an incredible, he really showed leadership at a difficult time for any leader, in my opinion, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. None of them could make perfect choices. He made a huge screw up on the nursing home thing, putting sick people from hospitals into nursing homes. And again, I'd give you a pass on making that mistake. And then it came out that they lied about it. They lied about what they did. They covered up the numbers, and that became scandal number one. Hit him hard. The Attorney General of New York calling for an investigation, looking into what he did. Again, the mistake itself may be forgivable. Lying about it and then lying about it and refusing to apologize, not so much. Then the accusations that he bullies people, that he's a bully, that he threatens everybody who doesn't agree with him, that he's basically Donald Trump on the left. And then the sexual harassment accusations. Now, the most recent sexual harassment allegation comes from a woman named Lindsay Bowen. And Lindsay Bowen, there's her next to the governor. Obviously, they're not in the same shot together. She was a top aide starting in around 2018 to the governor. A close aide. She became the head of the New York Economic Development Commission and really one of the top aides to the governor. And in January, she started in January, but this week she finally came out with I'm messing this up. She came out saying this week, here, let me just put up what she said. We'll just get right to it. Here's what she said. She tweeted, "Today I am telling my story. I never planned to share the details of my experience working in the Cuomo administration, but I'm doing so now in hopes that it may make it easier for others to speak their own truth." So what she did is she's accusing him of a pattern of abusive behavior, bullying, and sexual harassment for the entire couple of years she worked for him until she finally quit. And she first stated these allegations in December of last year, right at the end of the year. And today, this week, she came up with more details. So here's what she said, at the end of the year. "Yes, at New York, Governor Cuomo sexually harassed me for years. Many saw it and watched. I never could anticipate what to expect. Would I be grilled on my work, which was very good, or harassed about my looks, or would it be both the same conversation? It was this way for years." So she accused him of all kinds of things. And the details matter, but the big picture is what's really important. She accused him essentially of doing all kinds of things, from claiming, focusing on her looks, which a lot of men in power do, to putting her in inappropriate situations, putting her in places where she was alone, constantly commenting on it, and then even commenting to other staff members about it. One of the governor's top aides, he told her that Lindsay reminded him of his ex-girlfriend Lisa, and that but that she was the prettier one. Again, all that, you could go not appropriate, not okay. Is it just bad men behaving badly? We're in the whole Me Too movement. But then she said, finally, it came to a point. They were on a plane, and between his press aide and the bodyguard, and he says, "Why don't we play strip poker?" And she sort of laughs and jokes and goes, "Oh, that'd be fun." And then finally, a little while later, she says he cornered her in his office and forcibly kissed her. That crosses all the lines, right? At that point, if that's true, all the other stuff may not be excusable, may not be okay, maybe bad behavior, and maybe should be punishable bad behavior. Certainly, if it's a pattern, I think we'd argue it should be. But grabbing her and kissing her, now we're in full-on assault, right? Now we've crossed the line from all the bad verbal abuse, and all that other stuff is bad enough. And so the reaction was kind of interesting. And that's why I want to go with this. So, of course, Rose McGowan, who has been 100% consistent on this stuff, the original Harvey Weinstein accuser, has come out, no matter who said it, and if she thought it was credible, just gone balls to the wall on it, unlike some people who've made this left, right, or center on it. So let me read what Rose McGowan said. "Welcome to your reckoning at New York Governor Cuomo. Do not deny, take ownership of your behavior. Your kind of power abuse will no longer be tolerated. Lindsay Bowen deserves respect. Dirty politicians do not." Now, what's interesting is that, thanks, Crafty. What's interesting is that Lindsay Bowen, in a series of tweets, and if you want to go look at the tweet history, it's pretty fascinating. She talks about how originally she saw her sexual harassment the first time when she was a kid, a teenager, and her mom, who just graduated college, obviously a late college graduate, got a job, and her boss tried to grab her and kiss her and stuff. And she quit the job, and she, as a teenager, Lindsay Bowen was like, "I am going to get myself in positions of power. I'm going to get educated. I'm going to be powerful." Her mom was like an assistant to someone. "I'm going to be powerful, and I'm going to make sure this stuff doesn't happen to women." So here's a woman who was on a mission to do it, gets herself into these powerful positions, finds herself excited to be working with a governor. She's a Democrat, obviously, with a governor of a big state who's got a legacy of being a leading Democrat, and she's excited. And she's like, she says, "I looked the other way and put up with it for so long because, one, I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be there." Maybe some part of her also didn't want to believe it was him, but finally she said, "I'd come to work nauseated. And, I'd be sick to my stomach about it." I mean, if you read into the details of it, it's kind of what when Rose McGowan said, in a separate thing, she did an interview. She said, every word of this woman just drips with authenticity. And if you read her tweets, it doesn't feel like somebody just throwing a random accusation out. It sears with the pain and the frustration of how did this happen to me? And why did I put up with it for so long? And why did he do it? Why did he do it? And why does he get away with it? And she said finally she went public when he was being talked about being nominated for Attorney General. And she's like, he's going to be the most powerful office in the world. I don't want him to be that. We should call him out on this. So, and here's where it gets interesting. I'm going to show some double standards in this. And I'm not trying to make this left or right. I'm trying to make this about consistency. And there's a reason why that matters. So some leading Democrats did come out and say something. The head of the state Senate, these are Democrats, the head of the New York State Senate said that the allegations were deeply disturbing and that this kind of behavior has no place in the workplace or anywhere. The head of the state assembly, the counterpart, also a Democrat, she came out and said these are serious allegations, which is a little softer, but still acknowledging it wasn't like, oh, that's BS. And then a well-known Democratic Assemblywoman, Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, said she said when she heard it, she found them abhorrent and heartbreaking. So, and other people said we need a thorough, independent, transparent investigation. So on the positive side, a lot of Democratic lawmakers are going, this needs to at least be investigated. They're not just sweeping it under the table. Although crickets from Vice President Harris, crickets from New York Senator Gillibrand, who was so outspoken, both of them about Kavanaugh. Crickets, not a mention. And that's the double standard. It's just so bad. Governor Cuomo denied everything through a spokesman, said it didn't happen. Didn't happen, never occurred, none of it occurred. Again, it's he said, she said. No, not yet, Crafty. It's he said, she said at this point, right? I mean, it's like, and that's going to always be the case, right? Unless other people are in the room, it's always going to be he said, she said, and only those two people really know. But remember Christine Blasey Ford, remember Brett Kavanaugh, the hearings when he was running to be a Supreme Court justice. And Dr. Blasey came out, Blasey Ford came out and said, that he attacked her when she was in high school in a party. And she couldn't remember any of the details. She couldn't remember exactly where it happened, except it was in D.C. She just remembered that he climbed on top of her. She couldn't remember much else about the night, where it was, who else was there, only him, even though she didn't know him at the time. And her best friend at the time was at the party with her and said, she never said anything about it. I don't remember anything weird happening that night. And yet, the media, Democrats across the spectrum jumped all over Kavanaugh and said he'd climbed on top of this girl in high school and, tried to kiss her and pull her bikini off and so forth. Based on that, completely uncorroborated, barely can remember detailed statement of a woman who is completely politically the polar opposite, a hardcore Democrat. And yet all these leading politicians were like, you did it. He did it. Believe the woman. It was part of the Weinstein movement that Rose McGowan had helped trigger. Okay. Well, Lindsay Bowen's accusations are way beyond more credible. First of all, she doesn't have an axe to grind with him. She's a lifelong Democrat. She ran for Congress, didn't win. She's running for the Manhattan, president of Manhattan, the borough of Manhattan president. She was a strong supporter of Cuomo. She's a liberal. She worked closely with him. And her story just is so compelling. And other women came to her when she did it and said, when she came out and said, I had similar experiences. I was afraid to say anything. I was afraid to go to work. I was terrified what would happen to me. And yet crickets from the Kamala Harrises, crickets from the Senator Gillibrands. And although people in the Democratic establishment are saying we should look into this and it's disturbing, it's a far cry from he did it, get him out. This isn't really about the partisanship. It's about the hypocrisy. Here's what Governor Cuomo had to say about Brett Kavanaugh during the hearings and his accuser. To Dr. Christine Blasey Ford and all survivors of sexual assault, we believe you. We believe you, and we will fight for you. The sham FBI investigation and the bigger sham, this confirmation process, have energized us to fight even harder for our shared better vision for a better future for all. That's Governor Cuomo. We believe you. And to all survivors, we believe you. He then called on Kavanaugh to take a lie detector test. He said, Dr. Ford took a lie detector test. You take one. He called on Trump to have the Justice Kavanaugh take a lie detector test. You take a lie detector test. Prove it. Crickets. Maybe Governor Cuomo should be taking a lie detector test. But again, we believe all women. It's the double standard that pushes my button. There's another double standard in this, and that's with the media. And I'm going somewhere as usual with all this, but it takes me a second to get there. Most of the mainstream media failed to cover this. On Wednesday when it came out, MSNBC, CNBC, NBC News, CBS News, ABC News, crickets, not a mention of it, not even a mention that a former high-level aide has come out with at least credible accusations, whether they're true or not. You don't have to pass judgment, but to just acknowledge that it happened, to report. Aren't they reporters? To report that it happened. Yet with Kavanaugh, it wasn't, they reported every grisly detail, unproven or not. They reported that when the gang rape accusations came out from someone else, like just wild stuff. But they don't even report this. Now, they started to have to cover it a little bit during the last 2 days, just a little bit. I will give credit where credit's due. Both the New York Times and the Washington Post, which are, I don't buy into the whole right-wing thing that they're completely like non-journalistic newspapers. There's some real good journalism at both those papers, and both of them reported on this, on this, and looked rather deeply into it. And on the media issue itself, they dug in. But they dug in and told the stories of what happened. And they honestly, they didn't tell it in a one-sided way. They told it in a rather objective way, which is what it should be, objective. But the media doesn't generally play objective. It goes all in or all out. This is where you had the whole problem, too, with the Chris Cuomo thing, right? The Chris Cuomo and Andrew Cuomo thing, right? Buddy up on CNN, brother and brother, right? Chris Cuomo, the anchor, Andrew Cuomo, his older brother, the Gov. And the Washington Post media critic wrote a piece about it. We got a little headline here about the problem of having Chris Cuomo dealing with his brother. Can we show the graphic of that, Crafty? Okay, guess not. There it is. So Chris Cuomo is reminding us why conflicts of interest poison the news. And just quickly, so you know, again, what happened was the CNN made an exception to their rule of not letting Chris Cuomo cover his brother, the governor, during the pandemic. They said it would be good for people. It would be good for people to see. So he covered his brother, but never touched on the hard stuff. When the nursing home crisis scandal erupted, but didn't say a peep. Didn't even ask him about it. It was just a whole big love fest. And of course, they got a lot of criticism from the right and conservatives. But for me, that was never the point. The point was like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be a journalist. You have your brother who's a governor on. You can't have him on and be praising him and not asking him questions. Typically, you're not allowed to cover him. So they made an exception. Well, conveniently, now that he's being accused of all these scandals, CNN has reimposed its rule that Chris Cuomo can't cover his brother. Here's what CNN said to the Washington Post. Check this out. The early months of the pandemic was a controversial time. We felt Chris speaking with his brother would help millions of struggling families deal with it. As a result, we made an exception to the rule that we have in place, prevents Chris from interviewing and covering his brother. And that rule remains in place today. Thanks, Crafty. So we put the rule back in place. Now, as the Washington Post media critic pointed out, you can't have a rule that keeps you on a conflict of interest from covering your brother who's a governor. Remove the rule during the time you want to effusively praise him and have a buddy session, and then put the rule back in place when the guy starts having scandal after scandal erupt. And yet they did. I'm going to get to Fort Walton Bleach, your comment. I've been accused of inappropriate behavior after somebody lost their job. Not fun stuff. I'd like to know, and you're welcome to come on the show and talk about it, to what degree your side of the story. But this is where I want to go with this, because I do think there really are two sides to this. And I'm not saying Andrew Cuomo is inherently guilty just because he's accused. I mean, the problem is the double standards, right? The double standards create the very problem we have. Because on the one hand, not only do they create mistrust and generally kind of, divide us further, but they also tend to create a way in which I believe that they have two problems, really, right? One is that I think it leads to people who really are good and trying to make a little mistake and get bumped out. And at the same time, on the other side, it leads to people who can play the game and know how to do it staying in, right? And I think it makes the real process of understanding when someone should or shouldn't be, held accountable to something harder and harder to follow. So there's a bigger issue here, and this is what I want to swerve into, the general power dynamic issue, right? Because it's not just about this one sexual harassment claim. Governor Cuomo has been accused repeatedly and increasingly of being a hardcore bully. Like I said, Donald Trump on the left. Karen Hinton, one of his top aides when he was at the Health and Human Services, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, came out recently, wrote an article in Medium in which she accused Cuomo and other male politicians of what she called penis politics. And penis politics, she said, is what happens when powerful men in politics publicly support, go all out as champions of women's equality and women in general. And then behind closed doors, she said, as she put it, they use their male domination. Wait, let me find the line. It's actually a great line if I can find it. I can't find it. So, but basically saying that, they publicly they do one thing and privately they use their maleness as a form kind of gender domination over women. And she describes it as this aggressive bullying technique. And look, Andrew Cuomo's known for that. His public persona, he's like razor thin temper. And I might have told the story before. I met Andrew Cuomo back around the time when he was married to Kerry Kennedy. And I was at their house, at the Robert Kennedy's house. And the whole family was there. I was working with Doug Kennedy, the youngest Kennedy son. And the whole family was in the room. And Doug and I were talking. And Andrew's sitting there at the table. And he literally just was like beating down on his wife's little brother, making fun of us as if like, what do you young idiots know about anything? And then he turned to his mother-in-law, Ethel Kennedy, the wife of Bobby Kennedy, who'd had this beat up life since, tragic after his assassination, and drank a lot. And he just mocked her. He just mocked her in front of the whole family and me as a guest. And I was like, why are you such a jerk? So I just want to say, Andrew Cuomo's got a rep for being a bully his whole life. And maybe that's how certain powerful people are. Maybe bullies get to power. But the bullying becomes a problem. And Karen Hinton talked about how he bullied. It wasn't just sexual, but he used his male dominance to be a bully, particularly over women, where women get silenced more, women get listened to less, women get dismissed more. That's what she described as Andrew Cuomo. And we have a clip here. Is it time for our clip, Crafty? You know, I'm moving fast because I don't have time for everything. Before we play that clip, let's play the clip. Yeah, let's go into the clip.
Sure, I'll bring it up.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is already facing criticism for part of his response to the pandemic, faces new trouble this morning over detailed allegations of inappropriate behavior in the workplace.
Democratic New York State Senator Alessandra Biaggi worked in Cuomo's office from April to December 2017.
I did not like going to work. It was actually one of the darkest moments and times of my life. He has used his power in a way to torture people, to threaten people. That is a line that you cross when you behave that way that is abusive.
Morgan Peckney, a journalist, says he received threats from one of Cuomo's top aides when he wrote an article criticizing the governor 7 years ago.
That culture that you describe of bullying, where do you think that came from within the office?
This comes directly from the top. This is the governor's MO. Everybody who covers Albany, anybody who works in the orbit of the Capitol knows that the governor is this way. And he thinks it's a virtue. And he's wrong.
So again, now we're moving from just harassment to bullying. And the bullying issue and using your maleness as a sort of as a form of like a gender domination is a problem a lot of powerful men have. You know, Karen Hinton described Governor Cuomo like being in a 50s marriage. It's all about him. And, you know, at a certain level, that's not okay behavior. This is way beyond the sexual harassment. Although the sexual harassment is at the core of it because it's the most explicit and the most destructive and where we're most divided. Because again, we take sides. The last piece that I skipped over is there, when I looked at the Twitter replies to Lindsay Bowen's original tweet, and I don't know if Crafty can back up and pop those up. If not, I'll just read them. But the things women came out and said, why didn't you leave, Lori the liberal? For years, really? Why did you stay on the job? Let's see the next one. Somebody wants their 5 minutes of fame. And then Calamity saying, you graduated from Wellesley, received an MBA from Columbia. You know, you have the guts, fortitude to do something about it. You should have walked away, but you chose to stay. So again, blame the victim. Now, this is where it gets interesting and complicated. Because again, you know, people were like, can't blame the victim when it was somebody accusing someone on the right. Believe all women. But now when it's somebody who's prominent on the left, it's, hear all women, don't necessarily believe them, and go ahead and trash her. Why didn't she walk away? Why didn't she leave? This is why, again, the double standard becomes a problem. Because I think at the end of the day, this really is a complicated problem. It's not black and white. It's not binary. It's not male, female, or they, he, she, or they. Because the truth is, you can't believe all women. It doesn't work. You just can't. You can't just, I believe all women no matter what. But at the same time, you can't only believe women when they're on the side you want or accusing a guy you don't like of it. And the argument of like, why didn't you leave? Well, again, blame the victim. You can't blame the victim ever. But that doesn't mean you can't find a balance where you, without blaming the victim, acknowledge that we all have some responsibility in the choices we make. Nobody deserves to be harassed. Nobody deserves to be a victim. Nobody's to blame. Lindsay Bowen, more than anyone else, isn't to blame because she didn't just walk away. Should she have walked away? Sure. The notion that you should just stay and he should change, that's an idea utopian world. That's what should happen, but it often doesn't. Hopefully we get more accountability, and it does. But should you walk away from an abusive environment? Yes, and Lindsay Bowen finally did. But the fact that she didn't do it right away, many people don't walk away from abusive situations, sexual or otherwise, right away. They're scared. They feel they don't know how to, or they want to try to accomplish something through it. So to blame the victim in that context is absurd. Don't blame Lindsay Bowen. But yet we do sometimes. And at the same time, we're not allowed to sort of say, again, believe all women or believe no women. No. Believe women, listen to all women. And we have to start making an honest decision about when something's believable or not. With the media, instead of attacking one side and not the other, how about anytime there's a legitimate accusation, you report on it, just like they're doing with this. And you don't go all balls to the walls with everything that anybody throws up in the air until you can confirm it. And with women making the choice to, about criticizing other women, I mean, that's just disgusting at a certain level because, again, you don't know what anybody's going through. But at the same time, it's okay to go, look, we don't live in a perfect world, so let's help people feel more empowered to walk away while we hold people accountable at the same time for what they're doing. Again, I think it's the hypocrisy that kills us. When you have one side, going after one side and not going after the other side, you essentially create a mess where nobody knows. Everybody feels twisted up in it. Nobody knows who to trust, who to believe. It sort of seems all kind of prefabricated. And what gets lost in that is the fact that we have a very real problem in this country, a very real problem of men in power too often abusing that power, both sexually and non-sexually, using their gender power to dominate other people, to dominate other men, to dominate other women, and to bully through change. That is something we can all agree needs to change. And that's something we all can be part of changing. But we're going to have to get out of our black and white courts on this thing and our all or nothing approach and put our partisan politics aside. I'm Rob Nelson. Something to think about. Thanks for watching.